Hello everybody, and welcome to the Daily Splatt for the 9th of January 2018. And today I'm answering another question from friend of the show, Liam. Liam has asked, why do scientists claim that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old when the Holy Bible clearly states that the Earth is only 6,500 years old? Well, Liam, to answer your question, it's all a case of evidence, and essentially which forms of evidence you choose to accept. Evidence essentially being what we take on board and accept as being indicators of the world around us and justifying and supporting our beliefs, whether they are religious or scientific. And this is a clash of essentially two different forms of approaching the world. It's a clash of theology and doctrine through religious studies, or scientific methods, and I suppose what you could say is evidence-based knowledge. So, let's start with the scientific age of the Earth, which is 4.5 billion years old, and to get some more information I will be consulting my friend, Mr. Laptop. So, the Earth is dated at being about 4.5 billion years old according to the scientific method. This is based on radiometric age dating of meteorite materials and also radiometric ages of the oldest known terrestrial and lunar samples. Now, the oldest such materials that have been analysed to date, which are from the Earth, are small crystals of zircon from the Jack Hills of Western Australia, which is where we record this, so, nearby. Now, they are at least 4.4 billion years old based on radiometric age dating, and that matches up with some calcium aluminium rich inclusions from meteorites, which have been found, which are about 4.56 billion years old. So that sort of gives us a lower age range for how old the Earth and indeed the solar system is. And it makes sense that the planets would all have been formed around the same time period. And the more samples that are collected from other parts of the solar system would help, and it is believed will help indicate that basically everything formed around the same time. Now, that's just based on age dating rocks, and it seems like a pretty solid way of age dating the Earth, but the reason that we have this discrepancy is because the development of radiometric age dating really only came along in the 20th century. In fact, we only realised that the planet could have the potential of being more than 1 billion years old in the first half of the 20th century. So that is a reason for, I suppose, the discrepancy. Obviously, the Holy Bible, as Liam refers to it, is somewhat older, and the reason that we go for 6,500 years if we accept Bible scripture as the fact of reality is because of the book of Genesis. Now, according to the Institute for Creation Research and their website, they state that Scripture presents enough chronological information to estimate the number of years between Adam, who God created on day 6 of the creation week, and Christ, who was the last Adam. From Adam to the flood was about 1,656 years, and Abraham lived a few hundred years after the flood. Other time markers in Scripture include the number of years Jacob's descendants spent in Egypt, the total number of years Israel was ruled by judges and then kings, and how long Israel was held captive by Assyrians and Babylonians. Adding these and other pieces, most of which even find confirmation from secular archaeological sources, bracket an age for the world at about 6,000 years old. So it's understandable that prior to the scientific methods which were developed in the previous century, that you would look at a book of Holy Scripture for knowledge, because that's what these religious texts were, and so it makes sense to look at that and go, okay, well, if Abraham was knocking around this time, and we look at this line of descendants and all these different events, it does make a certain level of sense that you could date the Earth as being 6,000 years old. Now, the question is, which to believe? Well, that's entirely up to you. My own personal preference is towards a scientific method of looking at things like this, and personally, that is just my choice. I suppose I live my life more on a sort of evidence-based reasoning, but if you want to believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old, then there's not really much that I'm going to be able to say that will make you change your mind. And indeed, the question of whether or not one should try and change another person's mind is a question for an entirely different video. But in short, Liam, that is the reason why there is the discrepancy. That's because the scientific community use an entirely different format for discovering the age of the universe and creating that evidence than the Holy Bible. That's all for today. If you've got any questions that you'd like me to ask, please leave them in the comments below. But until tomorrow, bye!